Despite enhanced protocols and access to testing, the White House has seen some coronavirus cases. Trump's personal valet and Vice President Mike Pence's spokeswoman have recently tested positive. 3 members of the coronavirus task force, including the nation's top infectious diseases expert, Anthony Fauci, are in self-quarantine. Pence, however, says he will not self-quarantine and plans to be at the White House on Monday. Let's bring in our correspondent, Jim Spellman in Maryland. Jim, recent cases in the White House contradicts Trump's statement on opening up. What can you tell us?
It is scary to go to work. That's how a top White House staffer described the mood amongst employees there at the White House campus. It's very difficult for President Trump to project confidence about businesses across the U.S. reopening when his top employees are scared to go to work. And keep in mind, they're at the White House. They have access on a daily basis, even more than once a day, if needed, to short testing that can be done in a matter of minutes. Most people across the U.S. don't have access to that kind of testing at all. And it's going well beyond, as you mentioned, just the 2 staffers confirmed to have had it. Vice President Pence spent the weekend in self-isolation. We do understand, though, that after testing negative, the Vice President will go to work in the White House complex this week. 3 top doctors, as you mentioned, Dr. Fauci, plus the head of the CDC and the head of the FDA, are all self-isolating now after being exposed to the virus there at the White House. All 3 were slated to testify before Congress on Tuesday. They will now appear via video link. And now we understand the chairman of that committee, Senator Lamar Alexander, will also appear via video after he was exposed to the virus through a staffer in his office. Despite all of this happening, though, President Trump over the weekend met with the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the top U.S. military people. In a photo released of their meeting at the White House, nobody in the photograph was wearing a mask. Critics say that sets a bad example. President Trump expected to address testing and other issues at a speech at the White House later today. Yes?
Jim, Democrats in the House of Representatives are calling for another massive relief bill. How likely is this to be passed?
Well, Republicans are saying that they're just not ready to begin those kind of negotiations. There's growing concern in Republican circles that the response to this crisis is simply costing too much. It will lead to debt and deficit issues down the road. Democrats are expected to roll out a massive new plan that would provide more direct aid for unemployed workers. Republicans will likely balk at that. The White House saying they're not ready to even begin negotiations unless they're assured they get something in return. The White House would like to see a liability shield law that would protect businesses that reopen should employees or customers contract COVID-19. President Trump also pushing for a payroll tax cut. Democrats say that's less about addressing the crisis and more about helping President Trump get reelected. Republicans and the White House focusing instead on reopening U.S. businesses, hoping to stimulate the economy through that. But we're already seeing the hazards of that in areas that have begun to reopen. We're seeing in some cases tick up. It's a delicate balance with no easy answers. But politics, electoral politics ahead of November's election are increasingly becoming an important part of how the federal government responds to this crisis. Yes?
All right. Thanks, Jim. Jim Spellman in Maryland for us.